What's up, everybody? Davekwon here, and as you may know, it is March, and you know what that means? March Madness. So today we're going to go ahead and fill out a bracket. Good news, bad news. The bad news, unfortunately, neither one of my teams, Michigan or Cincinnati, made it in. Cincinnati was probably one win short of getting in the tournament, and Michigan was a dumpster fire this year and fired their coach. So the good news with that is I don't have to fill this bracket out with my heart. I won't have Michigan or Cincinnati going way farther than they probably would have gotten and ruining my bracket. So, that being said, let's go ahead and get into this bracket. All right, so we'll start in the East region. And we have Connecticut as the number 1 seed, Stetson as the number 16 seed. 16s have, until the last couple years, never won any, but there's been a couple upsets with 16s over 1s. That's not going to happen here. UConn goes on to beat Stetson. Moving down to the 8-9 seeds, we have Florida Atlantic versus Northwestern. I am going with Northwestern off the strength of Mr. Boo Buie. Boo Buie is going to rip it up. Tackle the Owls. Okay. Moving down to the 12-5, don't know anything about UAB or San Diego State this year. So, these are kind of a coin flip. The 12-5s are always trouble. So, I'm going to take... let's go San Diego State. Just because. Yale Auburn. Yale probably should have lost their game the other day, but they hit a buzzer beater to win it. That does not continue against Auburn. Auburn is going to win. BYU and Duquesne. So BYU, they live and die with the three-pointer. So they're going to get got in one of these games. But I don't think it's against Duquesne. But they're going to come into a game where they can't hit their threes, and that's all they have. But they're gonna make it out of the first round here. So we go BYU. Illinois, Morehead State. I'm just going to go Illinois here. Washington State and Drake in the 7-10 matchup. Again, I don't know much about these two teams, but I have a friend named Michael Drake. So we're going to go with Drake and hope that that works out. So Michael, if you're out there watching and Drake wins, thank you. Iowa State and South Dakota State. All right. South Dakota State is one of these teams who I always pick because they're the Jackrabbits. They never win, but that changes this year. 15-seeded South Dakota State knocks off number 2 Iowa State in our big first round upset here. All right, so let's move down to the West region where we have number 1 North Carolina versus the winner of the play-in game of, it looks like, Howard and maybe Wagner. Not 100% sure on that one. I think North Carolina is kind of a suspect number 1 selection, but they do make it through the first round. So, North Carolina goes on. And then we got 8-9, Michigan State versus Mississippi State. Michigan State is a team that is always projected in the top 5 going into every season, at least for the past 10 years. And then by the end, they're always out of the bracket. I think they just get in because of their name and because of their coach, Tom Izzo. So I'm going to have them getting knocked off in the first round by Mississippi State because I feel like they probably shouldn't even be in the tournament. Yeah, they're just in on their namesake alone and their coach. Moving on to St. Mary's and Grand Canyon. St. Mary's did win their conference. They beat the perennial basketball powerhouse Gonzaga in the tournament and in the regular season, I believe. But The hoop is going to be the size of the Grand Canyon for Grand Canyon, and they're going to blow away St. Mary's in a 12-5 upset. All right, moving on to Alabama and Charleston. Don't know much about Charleston. I know that Alabama can score the ball. I think they're one of the highest scoring, if not the highest scoring team in the NCAA this season. So we'll go ahead and go with Alabama. Clemson, New Mexico. Don't know too much about either one of these teams this year. So let's. I'm kind of leaning towards New Mexico on this one. New Mexico, just because. Baylor and Colgate. I am bitter about Baylor beating Cincinnati in the tournament and in the regular season, the Big 12 tournament. Colgate, they burned me on a bet this year, so I'm going to just go with the Big 12, even though they beat Cincinnati. We're going to go with Baylor. Dayton and Nevada. Dayton is tough. I don't know much about Nevada this year, but several years ago, I think it was 2017, Cincinnati blew a 22-point lead against Nevada in the tournament and got knocked out by them. So screw you, Nevada. I'm going with Dayton. Arizona is a team that is really talented, but I feel like they underachieve. But that's not going to be enough for them to lose against Long Beach State. So Arizona moves on. All right, so let's swing back over here to the other side. Houston and Longwood. I'm going to click Houston. Houston's defense is stifling. So I think that could be trouble for teams in the tournament that have not seen them before. I don't know anything about Longwood, although I think my friend from high school, Gentry, went to Longwood College, but that's not going to be enough for them to beat Houston. So Houston's moving on. Nebraska, Texas A&M. I've seen Nebraska a couple times this year. They are okay. Texas A&M, I don't know anything about. I feel like the Big Ten is kind of overrated a little bit as far as these tournaments go. They may get one team that goes through. They always get a bunch of teams in, but usually by the second round, a lot of them are out. So I'm going to go with Texas A&M. Wisconsin, James Madison. Yeah, Big Ten, they overrated. So James Madison. Yeah, we'll probably end up putting a couple through, but yeah. Duke and Vermont. Vermont is another one of those teams like South Dakota State that I like to pick to win, and they usually don't. But I'm going to go with a second round 13-12 matchup of Vermont and James Madison. Vermont knocks off Duke. Beat it, Duke. They don't have that Krzyzewski magic there anymore. Okay. Texas Tech, NC State. I know a little about Texas Tech. They're pretty good. I don't know anything about NC State. I'm going to have Texas Tech moving on. Kentucky versus Oakland. I think Kentucky had injury problems this year, but I think they're back to full strength, so I feel like that'll be enough to get them by Oakland. Florida and the winner of Boise and Colorado, I guess. So one of these play-in games that I hate. I'm just gonna have the winner of that game beating Florida. They'll have a little momentum going on. They'll have a game played. So they'll be a little more loose and limber coming into this Florida game. So yeah, the winner of that game goes through. Marquette and Western Kentucky. Marquette is very good, so I will put them going through. All right. Next, down to the Midwest bracket. Number 1, Purdue versus Grambling, or I guess that's Montana State. Either way, probably doesn't matter, even though I think Purdue got beat by 16. I don't think it's going to happen twice. If it does, then That's too bad, Purdue. That's terrible. Utah State and TCU. TCU is pretty good. Utah State don't know much about. These 8-9 matches, a lot of these are coin flips. I'm gonna go with TCU out of the Big 12, but I'm not fully confident in that. Because I just really don't know anything about Utah State. Gonzaga, McNeese. McNeese is one of these ones that all the analysts are saying, oh, they can knock off Gonzaga. I don't know anything about McNeese, but Gonzaga though, they're man, they do well in these tournaments. So I have a hard time going against them. So I'm going to go with Gonzaga. Kansas and Samford. So Kansas is an interesting story. They're loaded with talent, but they have seriously underachieved this year. Plus, their two best players are injured right now, and I don't know whether they're going to be ready to play or not. So this one's a toughie. Because Kansas has been falling apart at the end of the season, even with their two best players playing. So I'm going to go with Samford in the upset over Kansas. Because even if those guys play, they might not be at full strength. So, yeah, Samford in an upset over Kansas. South Carolina and Oregon, don't know too much about these. So I'm just going to pick one. South Carolina. Creighton and Akron. I'll go with Creighton. But I feel like they're one of those teams that relies heavily on the three. So if they're off on a night, they can get got. But I'm gonna pick them for the first round. Texas versus either Virginia or Colorado State, maybe. I'm just gonna go with. I hate these playing games. I'm gonna go with Texas. They have a guy who can score buckets. I think he's got over like 3,000 points in his career. So we'll have him continuing on. Tennessee and St. Pete. Tennessee is very good, and I don't think they have trouble with St. Peter's. So there we go. All right, let's scroll back up to the left side here and get into the next round. Connecticut Northwestern. I love Boo Booey with Northwestern, but I don't think they're going to have enough other than him to get by UConn. So I'm going to go with UConn beating Northwestern, but I do like this Northwestern team. Boo Booey is really good, so look for him to have a good tournament, but I don't know if it's going to be good enough to get them by UConn. San Diego State and Auburn. I'm just going to go with Auburn because this is another one of those coin flip games. Haven't really seen too much about either of these guys, but I know Auburn has Bruce Pearl as their coach, who's a good coach, and I feel like he can get them through. BYU and Illinois. So like I said, BYU is totally reliant on the three. So if they're hitting their threes, they're tough. But I think that may end against Illinois, although I don't like putting Big Ten teams through too far because there's usually only one team that kind of finds their way past the second round for the Big Ten. And if BYU has one of their shooting nights, where are those playing? It doesn't say where it's being played. Gosh. You know what? BYU catches fire in this game. They move through. They're going to have two good games, and then that might be it. Ooh, Drake and South Dakota State. Oh, the Jackrabbits versus the Fighting Michael Drakes. I'm gonna go with Drake. The Cinderella story of South Dakota State Jackrabbits ends here in the second round, but good job in the first round. All right. Carolina and Mississippi State. I think that Carolina gets knocked off because I don't think they're too terribly great. So Mississippi State in the grand upset. And speaking of grand, they do not make it by Alabama. Alabama and their high-scoring offense takes care of them. New Mexico and Baylor. I'm going to go with Baylor. Dayton is going to knock off Arizona. Overrated Arizona out. All right. Okay, so that looks like it's it for that side. Scroll back up here. Houston, Texas A&M. I think Houston's defense is just incredible, and they take out the number 9 Texas A&M Aggies. Oh, James Madison and Vermont. Oh, you know what? Vermont upset. Boom. Vermont versus Houston in the next round. Texas Tech and Kentucky. This is another one that these are tough. So Texas Tech, Kentucky. Let's Calipari, I don't think has been faring too well in these tournaments recently. So he's always got loaded teams, but a lot of times they just end up going. They're so young because so many of his guys go to the NBA right away that they just don't have like a lot of experience together. So I'm going to go with Texas Tech. Let's do Texas Tech here. All right. Next, Boise and Colorado. They get trounced by Marquette. Let's put number 2 Marquette going through here. All right, back down to the Midwest. Purdue and TCU. I think Purdue is going to get got, and I think it's going to be by TCU. Gonzaga, I think should roll through Samford. South Carolina and Creighton. I'm going to go with Creighton. Tennessee. I think Tennessee should beat Creighton. Okay, so that's it for the bottom there. Okay, scroll back up to the East region. UConn and Auburn. This one could be a toughie. But I just think Connecticut might be too much, and they roll through to the Final Four here. Now we have BYU and Drake. Oh boy, what have I gotten myself into here? Okay, or not the Final Four, the Elite 8, probably. Yeah. Okay. Oh boy, I think I've painted myself into a corner here. I don't like putting BYU out this far. You know what? Fighting Michael Drakes. Let's go. Knock off BYU. BYU has a bad shooting night. Drake takes advantage. Moves on. Okay. Back down to the West region. Alabama, Mississippi State. I guess I'll just go with the higher seeded Alabama here. Baylor and Dayton. I think Baylor gets through. Dayton's dreams are shattered. Okay, so let's go back up to the top here. Sadly, Vermont, the Catamounts, are knocked out by Houston and their stellar defense. Houston moves on. Texas Tech and Marquette. Again, Marquette is just too much for Texas Tech. And scroll down to the Midwest region. TCU and Gonzaga. I guess we just look to have Gonzaga get another magical run going here. Tennessee knocks out Creighton. And there we have it. All right, back up to the top here to the East region. So we've got, UConn and Drake. Drake, sorry. Your story ends here. UConn moves on. Scroll back down to the West. Alabama and Baylor. Baylor, Alabama. Baylor. Let's go Baylor. Let's do it. I've seen Baylor play, and they're a tough team, so yeah, we'll do that. We'll do Baylor. All right. Houston versus Marquette. Oh, man. I love Houston's defense. They play so hard. Offensively, they're not the greatest, but their defense is so good. Let's see. I haven't hit the preview button yet. Let's preview this thing. It's gonna give their schedules and stuff. It's that doesn't seem too helpful. Okay. Gosh. I'm gonna ride the Houston train here and just say that their defense gets them through. Okay. Back down to the Midwest. Gonzaga and Tennessee. I think Tennessee is going to be too much for Gonzaga, so we'll do Tennessee. Okay, so we've got our final four, which I have UConn, Baylor, Houston, and Tennessee. So I have 2 1s, 2, and a 3. So that seems plausible. Seems like this could happen. Because I don't have a lot of faith in the number 1 team or the two number 1 seeds of North Carolina and Purdue. I think they get knocked out early. So I kind of like this. I like this. Now where I go from here, because UConn won it all last year. I think they probably knock off Baylor. Houston and Tennessee. I mean, I haven't really seen Tennessee play too much this year. I've seen a lot of Houston. I like this Houston team. I worry about their offense sometimes. Let's see. Let's do a preview again. So this guy averages 21 points a game. This guy 15. Jamal Shed was the player of the year, I think, in the Big 12. You know what? I think Tennessee. Tennessee or Houston? Gosh, this one's tough. You know what? Houston, let's go. And finally, do I have Connecticut take a second one in a row? Who? Gosh. All right, Houston. Houston wins it all. Houston wins it all. We're going with it. I don't have a lot of confidence in it, but I know they just have a stifling defense. So, and I know it's probably going to come back and bite me. But we're going with Houston. Tiebreaker. How many total points will be scored in the championship game? So, since I've been talking highly of Houston's defense all day, it'll probably be a lower scoring game, somewhere like in the 70 to like 65 range. So we'll go with 135 as how many total points will be scored. Yeah, let's enter. And is there a submit? There we go. We're going to submit this bracket. There we have it. Okay, so I ended up with UConn and Houston in the final, and having Houston win it all just because of their defense, and hopefully they have enough offense to just outscore the other teams in every game. And all right, so there we have it. That is my 2023-2024 NCAA March Madness bracket. Hopefully you guys had a good time watching me talk this thing through. So hopefully it turns out, and I might have some updates on it as we go. And I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.